Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Alexander. Song Corc, artist Autechre, album LP5, released in '98. So that's what we're going to be checking out today. It's Autechre. I'm going to expect some oddities in electronic sounds. Let's dive in and see what they're bringing to the table today. Cool bit of Hocketing going on right here. The rhythmic layering is neat. And it's a nice evolution of a starting idea. Ooh. Really nice getting to hear this ending without the percussion on it. All right. It's nice to hear a different side of Autechre. I think for the most part, I've been given their more intricate designs. I know a couple of people have described Autechre as every subsequent album is a further exploration and decomposition of what they've done in the past. Their earlier stuff was easier to digest, and their later stuff is sort of the idea I get about them. And so it's nice to have something in this range from them to hear their composition style, but also their production style in a song that is fairly digestible while still exploring some sounds that sit a little bit outside the mainstream. I think it's based off of some idea of what they might have sounded like in the earlier days. I haven't checked out anything from that early, but assuming it was even more palatable than this feels like a nice midpoint between some of their more esoteric writing and maybe stuff that would be too simple for me. And I appreciate that. The middle ground is where I tend to like to stay. Extremities are they usually bounce off of me. Now this is just one idea. It does evolve. It's really strange to call this an A section. I don't know that I would feel comfortable saying that this is just one idea in a song in particular, but a lot of it is built off of a very similar foundation. There is a lot of evolution and constant reevaluation and recontextualization of ideas throughout this 6-minute song. You could probably, if you wanted to, divide that up into 5 or 6 different sections, and say that the song is a linear journey through a series of ideas, but a lot of it still retains that similar DNA, that similar blueprint at the foundation of it all. I think looking at it either way is accurate and both inaccurate. Much like where the song's technicality sits in a middle ground for their writing, the structure of this also sits in a middle ground. It is one extended idea, but to say that it's static would be incorrect as well. I don't really have a way to describe it. I don't have a nice word that means that it is one idea, but lots of ideas. It just, it's Autechre? Does that work? We start off with some melody and some percussion, some light beats. We eventually add more beats to it, increasing the rhythmic complexity of it. We add more melodic instruments until we have a bit of a Hocket going on around like the 3-minute mark, where we have multiple melodic lines all coming together to create a unified melody. We have some harmonic deterioration that we have towards the end. We have some timbre shifts throughout the track, and then by the end of it, we get to hear a stripped down melody without the percussion. It is this idea of starting bare minimal, building up until we have the foundation of a song, exploring and reworking and recontextualizing this core sound, and then stripping it back down. It's a pretty cool evolution to see on this track, and what I liked most about it was the ending, getting to hear the music minus the rhythmic elements, the percussion elements. Now, it is electronic music, and one of the big things that I like to talk about with electronic music is production. How does it sound? What kind of sounds are they utilizing? And this is something that I found interesting about this. All the instruments I feel work very well together, but they aren't necessarily what I would expect to hear together. I think that there's an overall production that goes into creating unification of these sounds, but I found it interesting to have these full-bodied melody lines paired with such a crunchy low, it's like chiptune percussion, right? It's a limited percussion palette. I think we have like what would resemble a bass kick and a snare, and then maybe something like a hi-hat. I think it's just the three instruments, and they're so compressed and staticky. It's it's a resemblance of percussion without really being like a digital drum kit, right? But then, like I said, it's paired with these very full-bodied, completely developed harmonic ideas, or not melodic ideas, the instruments that play the melodies. I can't say I expected those two together. And as we got further into the track, we introduced more compression, more of that static. We had some staticky, glitchy stuff going on after the 4 minute mark. The song begins to explore more of this hyper compressed sound, creating this staticky element to all of it. I think it's not so much the chiptune esque drums against the full bodied sounds for the lead lines, though, yes, that is a bit of a contrast, but it's also the contrast between the cleanliness of a majority of this track and the grittiness that we get in those hyper compressed, distorted sections. I think finding ways to combine both helps elevate the track. I think it would have been fine without them, but it's elevated a bit with them. Once again, maybe not so much in the direct middle of the road, but not swinging to one extreme or the other. It's not an entirely clean song. It certainly isn't a gritty, dirty song either, but they implement a little bit of grit in there to help drive some ideas for it, to create some contrast, especially there towards the end. And even at that point, we introduced glitch as well on top of that, creating parts of the song that felt like deterioration, like the song was falling apart entirely. The one main thing that I think in my expertise I can talk about with this one is the Hocket. There are three melody lines or lead instruments in here that are all doing less dense, more sparse, melodic work. By themselves, they're sort of textural and rhythmic. It's a couple of notes here and there. It really isn't until you piece all of these together and you hear the melody that they're creating with each other. And that's where a lot of the core of the song's drive and momentum comes from. It's what gives the song its pacing. The individual instruments I don't think are too interesting. I would love to get the stems for this and listen to each of these lines by themselves. It was really difficult for me to separate them out, even with as good as I am with active listening. They're crafted in a way, not just in the timbres that are utilized, but also the overall production, that they're designed to be listened to as a unified whole. So, like I said, I'd love to get the stems and listen to them individually and find out just how sparse they are. I know they're not doing as much as the larger idea, but they might be a bit more active than I'm thinking. Regardless, it would be very cool to find out in a phrase how boring they are on their own and find out what that, just how much of their interest comes from bringing all the ideas together. Because I've written Hockets in the past, and I'll tell you, unless you have an idea in mind, you're usually writing exceptionally sparse ideas where you're making space to fill in with another instrument. And so when you're listening to just this one, your mind's kind of filling in the blanks, but it's kind of boring and weird on its own because you expect the melody to go somewhere else, and then there's just pause. There's silence from the instrument. When you work with Hocketed melodic writing, you're going to have a series of incomplete sections. and those instruments are going to sound weird and typically boring by themselves. So when I say that they would be boring, I don't mean that as a negative. That's sort of just baked into how Hockets work by design. But I am kind of curious how complete or how incomplete they feel by themselves. Regardless, the way that it all comes together, it is phenomenal. I think it's a very fantastic. The melody isn't exceptional, but it keeps the song pushing forward, and I love the bounciness because the timbres are very similar but also very distinct. They're also placed differently in the mix, and so the melody is like little twinkling lights bouncing around, mostly center, but a little further to the left or right of center as well, and just creating this flavor, this texture. It's not all coming from the same voice, but all the voices are similar, so it's really easy to hear them all together as a unified melody, rather than if you had like a trumpet and a flute and a timpani. Like their timbres are very distinct, and it's going to sound like a bunch of instruments playing at different times. This, though, they're similar but distinct. So it's easy for the mind to sort of blend them together into a unified voice. And then the cool thing on top of that is you also get the timbre layering, where your mind will naturally pull together all the timbres and make a fourth instrument out of the three of them. It's pretty cool. I think that about wraps this up, though. I don't know that I have much more to add to this. I enjoyed listening to it. I think it has some really cool ideas in it. Very groovy, very bouncy, just sort of laid back, nod your head to it, just kind of get a nice little groove on. But maybe there's more on the production side that I just don't have an ear for. On the composition side, what I did hear, it's got some variation. We got some Hocket topics I covered. I don't feel any need to waste time and just sort of fill dead air trying to make a long video out of this. So, no lyrics in this, I don't think. Those are my thoughts on Autechre's Corc. Let me know yours down in the comments. Give me your thoughts, opinions, perspectives. If you think I'm wrong on any of this, if you think I'm right, if there's something you think I missed, let me know about any of that. Above that, in the description box, you can find a link to the special selection request if you'd like to submit your own. You can also find a link to Linktree, which takes you to this menu. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC, as usual. We're going to continue on with our exploration of indie rock. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.